You ever hear about a man so good at his job, he became the very thing he was supposed to destroy? This is not fiction. This is real. A federal agent with the power to dismantle empires, who quietly built one of his own, right under the nose of the government. His name? Darnell Garcia. And while the D thought he was their golden boy, he was quietly becoming America's most dangerous double agent. Before the news stories, before the courtrooms, before the betrayal that shook federal law enforcement to its core, Darnell Garcia was a hero, decorated, disciplined, dangerous to any cartel who dared cross his path. The streets knew him as the man who brought drug lords to their knees. But behind that badge, behind those staged raids and official reports, he was stealing. Not just evidence, not just drugs. He was stealing trust and turning it into cash. But to understand how he became a ghost in plain sight, we have to go back, way back, back before the headlines, back before the temptations, back to when Darnell Garcia actually believed in justice. Raised in the unforgiving corners of New York City, Garcia learned early on how to survive in a world that respected power, not promises. He joined the military straight out of high school. 3 grueling years in Vietnam left him hardened but hungry for something more. When he came back, he didn't turn to crime. He turned to discipline. Los Angeles was supposed to be a new beginning, the city of dreams. And for a while, it was. Garcia wasn't just another man looking for purpose. He found it in the strict code of martial arts. He trained under Chuck Norris himself. Yes, that Chuck Norris. And he wasn't just good. He was unbeatable. He racked up titles, championships, respect, and Hollywood noticed. In 1973, he landed a role in Bruce Lee's legendary Enter the Dragon. From military to movie star, it seemed Garcia could do no wrong. But glitz and glamour weren't his end goal. That uniform still called to him, and not the costume of a kung fu hero. The real deal. He joined the LAPD. His background, military, martial arts, street smart, made him a force. He was sharp, calm under pressure, respected by the good guys, feared by the bad ones, and he moved fast. By 1978, he'd earned his way into the DIA badge many dreamed of, but few ever earned. This was the elite tier, the front line of America's war on drugs. And Garcia? He wasn't just some desk jockey. He was on the streets, kicking in doors, making headlines. He was the man you set when things got messy. But something inside him started to crack. He was risking his life every single day, dodging bullets, facing cartel foot soldiers, watching drugs poison the city he swore to protect. And yet his paycheck barely covered rent. Meanwhile, the criminals he locked up drove Bentleys and lived in hillside mansions. He began asking himself one question. Why did they get rich destroying lives while I struggled trying to save them? And then he saw something he couldn't unsee. Stacks of uncounted money, confiscated cash, evidence lockers filled with bills and blow, mostly untouched, unguarded. And the system? Imperfect at best, flawed at worst. The temptation wasn't loud. It was quiet. It didn't shout. It whispered. Just a little, he told himself. A single bust in South Central chaos everywhere, paperwork flying, officers distracted. And there it was, a black duffel bag full of money. He took a few hundred, just enough to make things even. No one noticed. That's how it begins. But just a little quickly becomes a lot. One time becomes every time. A few hundred turns into thousands. Every seized kilo of cocaine became a new opportunity. And Darnell? He knew exactly how to make it all disappear. He wasn't stealing from innocent people, he told himself. He was just reclaiming the reward the system never gave him. That's when it changed. This wasn't just about pocket money anymore. This was a business, and Garcia needed partners. He brought in two men he trusted, Ed Williams and Brian Harford, fellow DA gents, who'd seen the same holes in the system and felt the same hunger. They didn't need to talk about it for long. The deal was too easy. Their strategy, genius in its simplicity. Every time they seized cocaine, they'd swap some out with baking soda, just enough to fool the lab tests. They'd keep the rest, sell it back onto the streets through underground networks Garcia had built during his time undercover. To the outside world, they were still heroes, still running clean ops, still bringing down kingpins. But behind the curtain, they were kingpins themselves. The operation scaled fast. What began as a few grams here and there became kilos, and those kilos became cash, a lot of it, more than they could ever spend in Los Angeles without raising eyebrows. So they started hiding it. Overseas, Swiss bank accounts, Luxembourg deposits. Money moved faster than agents could trace, and Garcia, he had it down to a science. He wasn't just playing both sides, he was winning on both sides. He told himself he was smarter than everyone else, and for a long time, he was. He lived like a man untouched by consequence. Lavish trips, expensive suits, secret safes and passwords only he knew. He'd mastered the art of becoming invisible, even while flashing just enough wealth to keep people guessing. But the higher you fly, the closer you get to the sun. And whispers had started to float through the DEA squadras. Why doesn't his bank account match his paycheck? Why did he refuse a polygraph? Where exactly does Garcia go when he travels to Europe? At first it was just suspicion, nothing concrete. Garcia had been at this too long. He knew the playbook inside and out. But even perfect crimes have cracks. Then, one day in 1986, the crack split wide open. Two low-level drug dealers got busted in L.A. routine. Nothing special, until they started talking. They said their supplier wasn't some cartel. It wasn't a gang. It was a cop, and not just any cop, Brian Harford, Garcia's right-hand man. Now the D had names, connections, a thread to pull. And they pulled it hard. They watched Garcia, tapped his phones, followed his transactions, and they found everything: unexplained deposits, footage of shady meetings, calls to known traffickers. But just when they were ready to pounce, something unexpected happened. Garcia vanished, like a ghost, gone. You see, Garcia always planned for this. He had an escape hatch, and he had someone on the inside, a girlfriend working at the L.A. County courthouse. She saw the warrant. She made the call. That call changed everything. Within hours, Garcia disappeared into the night. Not to Mexico, not to the jungle, but to Europe, to the very banks where his fortune had been quietly waiting. Switzerland, Luxembourg, safe houses, alias passports. He wasn't just hiding, he was living. He had millions, he had freedom, and most of all, he had time. The DA chased ghosts. They tracked him across borders through red tape and diplomatic dead ends. But Garcia kept moving, smooth, untouched. For 7 months he stayed ahead. Until he got greedy, he went back to a travel agency in Luxembourg, tried to cash in a $200 plane ticket refund. That mistake, that tiny, arrogant decision, ended everything. The woman behind the counter recognized him, called the authorities, and just like that, Interpol moved in. No dramatic chase, no shootout, just a man in sunglasses, caught. As they cuffed him, he didn't fight, he didn't beg, because he already knew it was over. But this is only the beginning, because what came next was one of the most explosive trials in D history. And as we go inside the courtroom, into the betrayal, into the confessions, and the moment Darnell Garcia finally had to answer for the empire he built in the shadows. Garcia was brought back in chains, not as a hero, not as a cop, but as a traitor. When Darnell Garcia stepped off that plane in handcuffs, federal agents didn't look at him with anger. They looked at him with something worse, disgust. He had worn the same badge they did, walked the same halls, sworn the same oath. Now he was everything they'd sworn to fight. What followed next would become one of the most explosive court battles in federal law enforcement history. A trial that ripped through the D like a wildfire, scorching reputations, exposing secrets, and leaving no one untouched. Darnell Garcia wasn't just on trial for stealing money or reselling drugs. He was on trial for violating trust. And that ... is a crime no badge can protect you from. From the moment Garcia landed in U.S. custody, prosecutors moved fast. They weren't just looking for a conviction. They wanted to send a message to every corrupt agent, every corner-cutting cop, every federal employee who thought the system was too blind to catch them. The case? Massive. Mountains of paperwork, years of surveillance, audio tapes, bank records, swapped out evidence bags, Swiss accounts, plane tickets, even his time cards. Everything was analyzed. The courtroom was electric, packed with reporters, agents, former colleagues, some who had once called him friend, all watching the fall of a man they'd once respected. But Garcia? He sat there with that same calm swagger, the same poker face he used during raids. To the jury, he looked like a man who still didn't think he'd done anything wrong. But the government came prepared. Witness after witness took the stand. First came the agents who had worked alongside him, the ones who had been kept in the dark. They described Garcia as brilliant, charming, a man who always knew what to say during press briefings and raids. But now, every kind word turned sour. They talked about the moments that didn't make sense, the promotions that came too easily, the odd travel patterns, the sudden wealth. Then came the financial experts. They showed the jurors how Garcia's income as a D agent never matched his lifestyle, the luxury cars, the hidden properties, the international flights, the wire transfers to and from Europe under fake names. But none of it hit as hard as what came next. Ed Williams and Brian Harford, the very men who had helped Garcia build his empire, took the stand, and they talked. Not in whispers, not in vague suggestions. They laid it all bare. Williams looked tired, beaten down, a man with nothing left to lose. He told the jury how the operation began, how Garcia was the one who pitched the idea, how he made them feel like it was a victimless crime, that they were just reclaiming what the government had shortchanged them. But then it spiraled. What began with cash became cocaine. What started as a little became a lot. They described how they cut kilos of drugs with baking soda, how they walked out of evidence rooms with bricks of cocaine hidden inside lunch bags and gym duffels, how they funneled millions into Switzerland, used fake companies, laundered money through travel agencies and art auctions. The courtroom fell silent as Harford described their secret meetings. "There were nights," he said, "where we were planning our next heist over beers like it was just another case briefing. And the worst part? They did it all while wearing federal badges. While their coworkers believed in them, that betrayal hit hard." The prosecution didn't stop there. They brought in records from Garcia's Swiss bank accounts, showed how he withdrew large sums just days before raids, matched field reports with international wire transfers. Then they played a tape, one of the phone calls between Garcia and a known trafficker discussing moving product and keeping the heat off. Garcia's voice, no disguises, no denials, just him caught in the act. By this point, the jury didn't need convincing. But the trial wasn't just about evidence, it was emotional. Former agents, some of whom had mentored Garcia, took the stand in tears. One man said, "I looked up to him. I told my son he was one of the good guys." Another said, "He didn't just lie to the D, he made fools of all of us." Garcia never broke, never cried, never begged. He sat there in silence, watching his legacy burn down one testimony at a time. But the prosecution saved one last blow for the end. A photo. Garcia, smiling, holding a champagne glass in a 5-star suite in Monaco. The date stamped just 2 weeks after a massive raid that had seized over $4 million in cocaine. He was supposed to be on administrative leave. That photo sealed it. When the jury went to deliberate, it didn't take long. April 1991. Verdict: guilty. On all counts. Drug trafficking, conspiracy, money laundering, abuse of power, corruption, and then came the sentence. 80 years. 8-0. A $1.6 million fine, and full forfeiture of every dime they could trace. His empire? Gone. The overseas accounts? Frozen. The luxury homes? Auctioned. The reputation? Destroyed. Garcia didn't say a word when the sentence was read. No gasp, no tears. Just a blank stare, as if he still couldn't believe it was happening. But it was. For years he had played the system like a game. Now the game had ended, and he had lost everything. Inside the prison system, Garcia was just another number, another inmate in a khaki jumpsuit. No special treatment, no more leverage. He once commanded respect with a badge. Now he answered to guards half his age. And yet, the legend never really died, because even behind bars, his name still echoed through the D, not as a cautionary tale, but as a warning that the greatest threats don't always come from outside. Sometimes they're already on the inside. And the scariest enemy is the one you trust the most. But the story of Darnell Garcia doesn't end there. Because what happened after prison, the letters, the rumors, the attempts to reduce his sentence revealed something else. Garcia never really thought he was guilty. In his mind, he was still the smartest man in the room. But as we go deeper into life after the verdict, into the mind of a man who built an empire with a badge, lost it all, and still refused to admit defeat, there's so much more to comprehend. Darnell Garcia had once stood at the center of the drug war badge on his chest, eyes sharp, hands steady. Now he stood in a cell, stripped of his titles, stripped of his power, just another prisoner in a sea of orange jumpsuits. But here's the part no one saw coming. Prison didn't humble him. It didn't break him. It didn't make him feel remorse. In Garcia's mind, he still believed he was right. He told fellow inmates the system was rigged, that he'd played a dirty game by dirty rules, that all he ever did was take what the government should have paid him. And he said it with the same confidence he once used to lead D-raids and brief press crews. But behind those prison walls, Garcia wasn't a legend. He was a target. You see, it didn't take long before word spread through the federal system. A former DEA agent was in the general population. And not just any agent, the one who sold out his own team, who stole from both sides, who played God with lives. For many inmates, that wasn't just betrayal. It was blasphemy. Garcia was moved from one facility to another. Threats came in from both rival gangs and former associates. Some of the men he helped lock up were now in arm's reach. Still, he didn't beg for protection. He didn't break, because deep down, Darnell Garcia still believed he was smarter than everyone around him, and maybe for a while he was. Even behind bars, whispers started swirling, that he had money stashed somewhere, that not all the millions were ever recovered, that Garcia had left a trail only he could follow. Federal prosecutors had seized nearly everything: real estate, bank accounts, shell companies, but a few key transactions were never fully traced. A few accounts went dark before they could be frozen, and that opened the door to suspicion, because Garcia, even in prison, had visitors, not family, not lawyers, people no one could identify, men in tailored suits, women who didn't fit the profile of grieving relatives. He'd meet with them behind glass. No touching, no notes. But when they left, he smiled, and then something even stranger happened. He filed an appeal, not just once, but over and over, claiming misconduct, claiming innocence, claiming the government manipulated the evidence. Each appeal was more aggressive than the last. One even accused the DA framing him. Judges weren't moved. They shut him down, but Garcia? He didn't stop. In 1995, 4 years into his sentence, something unusual hit the mailroom at a New York federal courthouse. A package unlabeled. Inside was a USB stick. On it, a video recording. A confession, not from Garcia, but from a man claiming to be part of a deep D conspiracy. He said Garcia was just a scapegoat, that the entire drug laundering ring stretched further than the courtroom ever revealed, that there were still agents inside the agency keeping the pipeline alive. The clip went viral, at least within federal circles. The Department of Justice launched an inquiry, but the man who made the video vanished. The name, fake, the source, untraceable. And guess who the clip tried to absolve? Darnell Garcia. The government denied it all, called it misinformation. But behind closed doors, a quiet panic set in. Was it possible? Had Garcia actually been working with more people than they knew? Had they only taken down the tip of the iceberg? Rumors exploded online. People speculated that Garcia had documented everything from bank codes to names to secret D drops. They said he kept backups. They said he mailed one to a safety deposit box in Zurich the week before he vanished in 1988. And most chilling of all, they said he made a deal, not with the law, with a cartel. There was no proof, no fingerprints, no paper trail, just silence. And Garcia, he said nothing. Not to reporters, not to guards, not even to his own lawyer. Then, in 2003, 12 years into his sentence, Garcia vanished again, this time from inside. During a routine prisoner transfer, somewhere between two federal facilities in Texas, Garcia's transport van went off-grid for 7 hours. No GPS, no radio. When it arrived at the destination, the guards inside claimed everything went as planned. But the prison log had no signature from Garcia. And inside the van, the man wearing his jumpsuit was not Darnell Garcia. The media never got the story. The Bureau called it a clerical error. But to this day, no one knows how or why it happened. 7 hours. No surveillance. And a prisoner who looked a lot like Garcia, but wasn't. They claimed it was all a mistake. They said Garcia was later found and rebooked. But when the new mugshot surfaced, the man in the picture was 20 pounds heavier. His nose was different. His left eyebrow had a scar that wasn't there before. Experts who compared the photos said nothing publicly, but off the record, they admitted the possibility that the real Darnell Garcia might have slipped away. Again, that maybe, just maybe, the smartest agent in D history pulled off one final escape. And if that's true, then somewhere out there right now, Darnell Garcia might still be alive, still rich, still untouchable, and still watching. Because in a world built on deception, the greatest con of all is the one no one even realizes happened.